Good morning, everybody, and welcome to ARC's web window on asset management and machine building. My name is Anne. I'm the moderator for today's session. And just shortly before we are going to start, we kindly like to invite you to ask your questions in our Q&A session at the end of this webinar. We really would like to hear from you and would like to include your voice in this conversation. To do so, please use the question and answer panel on the right side of your screen. The questions will be sent to my attention and I will direct them to our today's expert. So without any further delay, I would like to pass over the word to our today's expert, Florian. Florian, can you hear me?
I can hear you very well, Anne. And what about myself? Can you hear me?
Yeah, absolutely fine.
Okay, perfect. It's very kind of you to introduce me as the expert, as I'm covering for Stefan Miksch, but well, standing on the shoulder of giants, a dwarf may see further than the giant itself. Well, today it's about asset management, and honestly, why even talk about asset management? We often think that it's a very, let's say, intuitive subject. I mean, you drive your car, you feel what's wrong. Okay, I drive my bicycle, I can tell you if it's the rear derailleur or one of my tires which needs asset management. So why even talk about that? And with this, well, we have our agenda. Why even talk about asset management? Well, first things costs. It's a lot about confusion about the software terminology. It's not that straightforward. We are with asset management right at the forefront of adopting new technology. It spans from technology to organizational patterns. It makes it quite complex, right? So if I'm riding my bike and I know I need to fix the tire in the back, I am the user, I am the asset management expert, and I am the worker that actually does it. And last but not least, it's featured at ARC's Industry Forum next week. And of course, we wouldn't be a market research company if we also ask ourselves the question, so how is the adoption? So what is it about asset management? So here are our 5.5 topics, and we can get started. So first things first, 80% of the equipment costs are generated over the life cycle. If you buy yourself automation equipment, a machine or whatsoever, then 80% of the equipment are not the CapEx, but the OpEx. And this is really important to know. So a lot of times the focus is really on the CapEx and you have a lot of pressure to be cost competitive. Then you build the things, and what breaks the profitability afterwards is really the life cycle costs. And we did some research a while ago about the life cycle of, in this case, PLCs, so nano PLCs, which are used for very small applications, micro PLCs, which are small machinery, and then large PLCs, which range to line controllers all up the way to process control. And you can see the age of retirement, which is always the peak, the main is for it reaches from 7-6 years for the smallest type of controller, all the way up to 17 to 20 years. So overall, you can say the average lifetime of industrial equipment is around 5 to 20 years. Having said that, you would need to think in advance for asset management. You would need to think in advance of probably 5 to 20 years. Now think 20 years back, and you're in 2001. In 2001, I think the most prominent social media was, what was it, MySpace? I don't know. So technology changes a lot over 20 years. It makes it challenging, but again, huge potential. Now, second point, why to talk about asset management is about the immense number of terminology and software areas that we're tapping on. We're talking about asset integrity management, asset reliability management, enterprise asset management, field service management, plant asset management. And if someone talks about asset performance management, he or she probably is talking about all the 5 subjects above. Now, let's quickly go through these 5 steps and what they actually mean. Asset integrity management is typically, and this is the main sentence here, and I have a summary slide following, right? So it's concerned about safety of critical equipment. So we're talking about heavy equipment in heavy industries, primarily oil and gas. Asset reliability solutions enable manufacturer consistently achieve higher levels of operational efficiency. So it balancing costs and risks. So has a bit of the cost side already in here. Enterprise asset management is then really looking at the, let's say, ERP layer. We're really talking about how much assets do we have, how much are they worth, how much money do we want to put in there, look about work orders, labor skills, etc. And that is already closely linked to field service management. So who is doing what task at what time with which resources. And then at the very bottom here, we have, I would say, maybe the core, or what many people actually consider asset management to be, is plant asset management, which is the combination of hardware, software, and services. So here you have the condition monitoring, the temperature measurement, and all things that you measure the health of the asset, but then also you'll be reported upwards. So you already see that the software tasks aim from how is an individual asset doing in asset management, how is something maintained, what are my assets worth, and do I have the spare parts on stock? We're talking about increased uptime and running rate. So we are already, let's say, at a level where we include one asset in the whole plant, and then we have how long will my asset work until it breaks, and what happens if it does break down. Again, one thing on asset integrity management that is really looking into heavy process, and we're talking about the explosion, process safety, and the consequences, so all the SIL levels. So obviously, with this many tasks around asset management, we do have also different people and different stakeholders involved. So at the product, machine, and plant design, right? So you have one person who does design of the product, and then you have the machine builder, and then you have the product in this case, I mean, not machine, but the software vendor. Then you have the machine vendor, and then you have someone who does the plant design, the EPC typically. Then you do have the handover, and then you have that continuous flow of information. The machine operator may only get the HMI, so what is the machine actually doing? Then the next layer talks about how the asset is doing and how it's performing. And then we're talking about the maintenance team. And then on top of that, the accountant says that we're all running inefficiently and we need to save money. All of these speak different languages, and we need to close the loop. So the maintenance team needs to inform the operator when they're needs to do stuff, and everyone should have the same data, the common data set, and talk to each other. And while these people not speak the same language in some cases, that they are very different in terms of their culture, they have different targets in their organization, but also often in real life you have sometimes hundreds of different softwares pieces that were written to solve all these tasks, and not only just out of one hand. That makes assets quite difficult, and we have all the confusion about the software terminology. Well, I was already mentioning something like a data lake. So here a common data backbone where everyone has access to. So what makes why do we talk about asset management? And talk about it right now because asset management is at the forefront of adopting new technology. You can actually, in real life, it's sometimes in some Asian countries, you can actually just put one person next to a machine, putting a hand on the motor and scream if it's too hot. But in general, right now, asset management is included in the very, very latest of technologies, which of course makes this task even more complex because we often lack best practices. We are lacking procedures in a company and how all that works. And suddenly someone who has worked with vibration monitoring needs to talk about cloud platforms, the analytics layer and application layer and the edge, and everything has different layer. So in this case, you have a physical device for asset management that would maybe be an IPC which collects data. We have a couple of sensors. In the IPC runs Linux. There is a Docker. You have the Edge platform, PTC, Azure, IoT, Greengrass, Pixium. And then on top of that runs the Edge client of your asset management that does a couple of things at the edge in order to, for example, lower the data flow. So it does a fast Fourier transformation, aggregates some data, and then only puts the most relevant data and the needed data into the cloud. So it's a very new concept reaching into that layer, into the area of asset management. And we see that when we turn ourselves around a bit. So I'm personally responsible for AI research. I'm also involved in our edge controller study. And when we look into these, let's say, new subjects, asset, in this case, asset management, in this case, we named it maintenance in the study, or asset monitoring, asset management here for our edge control studies. In both of these new technologies, it is the key applications. So while over the last 10, 15 years, we were integrating motion and motion and machine safeguarding and process safety, and we're integrating that into the controllers, we are now integrating asset management step by step into the control layer. And mini break here, and if you want, you can take out your smartphones now and make a picture of this. This will lead you to our AI survey, artificial intelligence survey, which we're doing the second time now. And you can participate. It's not all around asset management, but it's about applications for artificial intelligence in industrial operations. And when you participate, it takes around 10 minutes. You'll receive the key results for free after the end of the survey. Back to the topic of asset management. Again, we said we are right at the forefront of adopting new technologies. And I named you the example that we're having this layer model at the edge. We're having the layer model also in the cloud. And that, of course, enables us to do new things in the area of asset management as well. So here, I'm pretty sure you are familiar with this. This is the reactive type. I cycle, well, it starts squeaking, it starts breaking down. I have to put it back and repair it. Preventive, I do that every month, and well, hands up if you're guilty of not fixing everything every month, but you have that fixed cycle and fixed cycles intervals. Okay, all good, but we all know it's quite costly. It bounds resources. It's not very efficient. Then you have condition-based, so you monitor a single data value for bad trends or other rule-based logics. And then you say, well, temperature goes up, vibration goes up, power demand goes up, and then you need to do something. However, you don't know why it's happening that, right? So especially monitoring power, consumption is a very good indicator, but what do? Just grease all the gears and hope it runs again? Yeah, all good, but it's for the troubleshooting, it can be a bit complicated. Then you have the predictive maintenance where you have multivariates, specific algorithms. So it should warn you months, weeks, days in ahead, and hopefully also give you some hint what to do. And especially when we then don't go into prescriptive, that's where the patterns are analyzed with AI or other algorithms, techniques that you not only have the analysis telling you when to do something, but also what to do. And if you, this is from ARC research, and it tells you for process industries, today 3 to 5% of all maintenance is predictive. The majority is not prescriptive, so don't get me wrong, the majority is here at the very bottom. Condition-based, preventive, and reactive, and the chunk of it is preventive. So if you want to tackle the costs, and that what we said earlier is that 80% are the life cycle costs. You need to change, you need to move from preventive to predictive and prescriptive. In order to do so, you need to, well, get through the whole software terminology and then get to the hardware in order to learn how to actually implement that. And of course, new technologies bring challenges. And this is also based on ARC research here. So we have the technical integration with legacy systems. So you want to do preventive maintenance or predictive maintenance, but the thing you have in front of you was installed 25 years ago. Well, we saw solutions where someone put a webcam in front of the machine in order to digitize it, and it just reads the temperature, right? So the webcam is just making a picture of the temperature gauge and then sending it. Works, but there are technical challenges with the integration. We have a skill gap. All these new technologies, you need to either develop the people you have on site or get new people. And that, of course, brings you back to other challenges. You often have the lack of data. Think of my, let's say, very extreme example where you have to take the webcam in front of the machine to just get it online. This machine was never online. The data is absolutely zero. And in some other cases where you do have the data, you don't know in which shape it is. Do you have, what's the frequency of observation, seconds, minutes, milliseconds, hours, weeks? Is it continuous? Data cleansing is a lot of work. And for AI, where data is key, you often say 80% of the time is not the AI, but everything around it, including predominantly data cleansing. And if you move to new technology, you also have high initial investment. Now, investing in a platform is nice, but investing in a platform also means that the first case is just eating money away in most of the cases. Get the network installed, get the switches, get the routers, install the platform, set it all up, and then you have one machine online. So you need to really think how you tackle the initial investment. Now, again, why talk about asset management? Well, it actually spans from technology to organizational patterns. We saw it earlier, and I talked about that a lot, so I'll go through that quite quick. You have accountants, you have the maintenance team, you have line management, the plant operator, the machine operator, and you have the OT-IT clash in general. Each of these teams had a very specific agenda, right? We're talking with someone who's responsible for energy management. He says, well, if I want to reduce energy consumption to zero, I shut down the plant, but then everyone else is unhappy. The accountant obviously wants to increase the cash flow. He wants to increase profitability, but that probably means cutting down on spare part storage, which the maintenance teams will complain about because they like to have stuff lying around being ready at hand. So that is a real challenge. Obviously, you don't only have the target setting, but you have the resistance to change as such. Those people may just be hesitant or even sabotaging new technology because they see that as a threat to their job. You have the general resistance to change, and you have the human factors that the people with oil and dirt on their hand just typically don't trust the people with ties and shirts and white shirts. And that's only just one organization. If you move that further, asset management, or predictive and preventive asset management especially, are also at the forefront when it comes to adopting new business models for machine builders, but also on the end user side. Just without going through the details, the main thing here on the if you're looking on the very, let's say, traditional business, you buy a machine, you own it, it's your problem. You maybe have 2 years of warranty, but that's it. With equipment as a service, the responsibility and the ownership, the financial risk and everything, it lies still in the hands of the machine builders or the equipment provider. They want and they need to monitor that. With this equipment as a service, you cannot do that without transparency. You cannot do that without remote asset management, remote maintenance, and have all the data available at hand. So if you go back here, the accountant may say, whoa, brilliant, equipment as a service solves a lot of my problems, but then the line manager, the maintenance teams and others, they go on strike. Just showing you this is really a clash here. So to do a very small interim conclusion, we have a very high complex area. We have the high potential of culture clash, and we need high tech. That's why we talk about asset management. And why actually do that? Well, because the benefits are extremely high. If you do that right, you're not tackling the 20% of the cost, you're tackling the 80% of life cycle cost. And if you're an equipment provider, you need to talk about asset management because that is what you need for future business models. Now, if you remember our agenda, we have one tiny thing here squeezed in. So how is the adoption? And I want to share that with you right now. This is what ARC does among many other things, is how is the market, how are users, etc. doing. Now, this is at which maturity stage would you rate your company's APM, asset performance management? And again, asset performance spans all these different types that we had earlier. All right. Well, biggest thing is orange. Well, share some data externally. You are basically connected, but in this case, 30% no intelligent or connectivity provided. That's really the person with the hand on the motor or just the reactive maintenance once things break down. But 5% say they're really real-time data analytics, onboard execution. So when you think back on our maturity curve or maturity model of asset performance management, that is the 5%. And then software defined and smart. So we are really saying we can roughly say, well, what is that? Not 3/3, but 2/3 are really on quite basic asset management right now, and only 5% are really advanced when it comes to asset performance management. We went one step further in our research and saying, so how is the adoption right now? So we ask about condition monitoring, analytics, enterprise asset management, mobile data collection, asset performance and platforms, machine learning, you can read it, and just saying what's your plan to implement, and they say it goes from now to no plan. And the first one, condition monitoring, has, let's say, it's the most mature. So you have the biggest here in terms of now, and then you see the blue one basically goes a bit like this. And so you can see that as a ranking. Condition monitoring is obviously the most mature, and then augmented reality and virtual reality are the least mature. That also means digital twin, surprisingly low in adoption. Machine learning works well, especially for isolated applications. So an asset tracking, no GPS, RFID, also very early in its adoption.
Yeah, thank you, Florian. Yeah, now we would like to start our Q&A session, and we have seen that our audience has been already quite active, so thank you for this. So here comes the first question. What are the data based on? It says that it should refer to slide 4.
Let me check in 1 second. Oh, that one. Okay, that's a good one. That's a good one. That was a survey we ran a couple of years ago, and we asked suppliers, machine builders, and users how long is the average life cycle of PLCs. We had, I think, 300 to 400 participants in that, so we do consider that to be quite representative. What happened in the last 3-4 years? Not really sure if that moved a bit left or right, but typically the industries are quite stable. So yeah, that's based on an ARC survey with 300 to 400 participants.
All right, perfect. Thank you. Do you have any indication how popular the enterprise as a survey already is?
Indications, yes, because there are 1 or 2 companies that do that quite actively and promote that, but it's not the broad mass of machines, and it seems to be only feasible in 2 cases right now. First, if the machine is running almost 24/7. So if the machine is in a chop shop and it runs only 8 hours a day, it's almost not interesting for the providers to provide that. And second, you either need to be a very big player with a lot of financial capacities, with including a bank license, things like that, or you need to team up with a strong partner for the financing part. Moving your business model from capex sales to equipment as a service eats away the cash flow of machine builders. So that's why many are very, very careful to engage in these business models, and that's why the adoption is rather low.
Okay. Yeah, we are nearly run out of time. I see there are 2 minutes left, and I would like to squeeze in 2 questions, to be frank, because I really like them.
Well, I hope they're easy.
First question is, how much money can be saved with asset management?
A lot. It really, I mean, it's here the 80%. You're tackling the 80%, and it's just weaving that one more time. It depends a lot of the industries where you're in. There are industries which purchase machinery, run it for two years, and then just throw it away because they're manufacturing a different product anyhow. So in this case, you save 0 money, probably, because the machine can run 2 years without maintenance. It also, but so it does depend a lot on the industries. Of course, when you're talking about industries with a very long life cycle of the equipment, utilities, so power, water, but also oil and gas industries and some of the mining, it can save a lot of money. And also if your production is laid out on 24/7 production, it can reduce the unplanned downtime. And there are stories where an hour of the plant being shut down costs $1 million or high numbers. Of course, that can save you millions if you prevent that unplanned downtime, right? So it does depend a lot on the industries where you're in and how your general production is laid out. I'm sorry, no easy answer on that one.
Okay, thank you. And last question, which I really, really like, is why is it so complicated regarding the software terminology?
I'm not a software guy, it's ask the software guys. I really don't know. I think the challenge is, of course, that every of these software puzzles, they go into each other and they work with each other, but they also come from different areas. So let's say asset integrity management is something that really comes from the oil and gas industry, right? So they have to work on that, and regardless what everyone else says, they need to prevent that the whole thing blows up, to be very drastic here in my wording. And the same with enterprise asset management. That comes from the ERP side, when the accountant thinks like, how much assets do I have? I have to write that down into my quarterly report. So what do I need to write down, and how do I optimize the spare parts? Then of course, if you have to manage your field services, you want to save the time there, and the traveling salesman is still a big problem for software optimization. I think it has a bit to do with history, and now they're coming together. And maybe asset management is very easy if you're just having one of these aspects, but then the complexity comes when you weave it all together, and then it gets very, very complex. So my short answer to that would be probably because of the history and the different stakeholders.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Yeah, so thank you, Florian. And that is all we have for today's webinar. And there are a lot of other questions, so please don't be mad at me if I haven't picked your question today. We will get back to you offline, so please bear with us. Again, on behalf of ARC, thank you for joining us and taking your precious time to join our webinar, and we really wish you a great day and a good start into the new week. Thank you.